folks. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Why Jesus. On today's show, we have Sharon from New York. Hi, Sharon. Welcome to Why Jesus.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Sharon, can you tell us a little more about yourself before we start off with the show?
Well, of course I can. So, I grew up in a Christian home with a mom and a dad and 2 sisters and 1 brother. I am currently in my 3rd year of college studying business with a concentration in marketing.
Did you always know that you wanted to pursue business?
Actually, no. I started college with nursing and then I switched to business, which was a big change for me. And it was like a huge transition for me. But I realized later on that this is what Jesus wanted me to do.
Now, you said that this is what Jesus wanted you to do. So do you consult him for important things like this in your life? Or is this like a day-to-day thing that you sounded like a very real person?
Yes, of course I consult Jesus. Jesus is my best friend. If I didn't talk to him, I wouldn't be where I am today without him. I always talk to him every single day, and I always consult him about everything, even the good and the bad. I always have to talk to him and ask him what I should do, because I can't do anything without Jesus' help.
Now, when you say you talk to him, is it just like a casual conversation, or can you clarify that?
Well, the way I talk to him is I pray to him. I always pray to Jesus, and even like on a day-to-day basis when I'm driving or something, I just talk to him as if he's my best friend, just sitting right next to me in the car, and I just feel like talking to him gives me a sense of peace, and I really like that.
Now, how did you start with this habit or talking to him?
I started at a very young age because I did grow up in a Christian home, so the word Jesus was very common to hear. So just hearing about Jesus on church every Sunday was very easy and free-flowing for me. But for me, I heard from him about a man named Nick Bujic. He was a man with no arms and legs, and I heard his testimony and his message, and that inspired me to have a relationship with Jesus, and it changed my life completely.
Now, you said it changed your life. Can you tell us how it has changed your life?
Well, after I got saved, I found out that I wanted to pursue my relationship with Jesus even more. I wanted to have a personal relationship with him even more and draw closer to him. I learned that having a relationship with Jesus was really a blessing in my life because it changed my perspective of things. It made me have a passion and a desire to live and to serve him wherever he called me to serve him.
Now, is there any specific experiences in your life that kind of convinced you and convicted you that this is what you want? You said the purpose of life. So you need to have a strong conviction for that. Was there any experience that really kind of concreted your faith in him?
Well, for me, growing up in a Christian home, it had its benefits because you could talk about Jesus, but there was another side where, for me, emotionally, I was struggling with life. I grew up being bullied, I grew up being depressed, and really having a lot of anxiety and doubt inside. And the problem for me was I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. So I really felt alone. But it was in those moments alone where I'm contemplating a lot of choices in life that I met Jesus, and Jesus was there for me, and he was able to help me, and he reminded me, even in the midst of all this chaos, that he was there for me and that he loved me, and I just needed that reminder.
Now, you talked about, going through those loneliness or the times that you felt really down and you couldn't speak to anyone. Did you ever have a time where talking to Jesus didn't work for you, or where your faith didn't really help you?
Well, there were times in my faith where I didn't hear Jesus' voice, and that's very common. But during the times when Jesus wouldn't answer me, I still prayed about it. I still talked to him, and I was still patient with it. And I was like, okay, I'll wait for your time. So while I was waiting during that time, I kept drawing to his word and reading the Bible every single day and drawing closer to him.
Now, you said reading the Bible, Sharon. Is there any specific way, or is there any specific guideline that you followed when you read the Bible?
For me, I started off reading Psalms, And from there, I started going into like the New Testament and then like going back into the Old Testament. But I felt like for me, studying Psalms was something that I wanted to do because it was something small with like the chapters are really small. So I enjoyed reading Psalms a lot because it was like there were a lot of key verses to focus on. So that encouraged me a lot.
Do you have any favorite verses that you'd like to share with our viewers?
My favorite verse is Psalms 23 verse 1, which is, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And I feel like that's like a key verse to know because it's like, it's very common to know, but it just reminds me that Jesus is my shepherd and I'm just like a sheep and he's always guiding me and he's always there for me and he provides like every step that I need to take. Like he is always with me.
Now, how has it been being a youngster in today's world, living your faith in Jesus out there?
It has been really difficult sometimes. It's not always easy staying strong in the faith because as a Christian, it is very common to face persecution. Sure, I'm not in like a country where persecution is very common for Christians, but here, even in America, you can still face persecution because people, your friends might not believe the same beliefs as you, and they might look down on you, and they might persecute you just like that. So I've faced persecution like that too.
How have you dealt with that?
For me, I've prayed for those who have persecuted me. I've asked God to give me the strength, asked Jesus to help me with that. And even if like those friends don't want to be friends with me because of my faith, I still ask Jesus to bless them because I still want them to be blessed and in God's time to know about him.
Now, with your experience of growing up, which phase of growing up would you say is most challenging as a believer and as a young adult?
For me, growing up, I feel like college is the biggest, most challenging experience. The reason is because when you go to college, you're away from a lot of things. You're away from like your friends and family, and you have to start all over again. So I feel like that makes a big difference because it's like you're in a whole new environment and you're just basically by yourself. So you have to stay strong in your faith. And that's like a big challenge. But even though it's a huge challenge, it's a journey worth taking because you learn to stay strong and you learn to even develop a stronger relationship with Jesus.
What are some of the challenges you face in college as a believer, Sharon?
Some of the challenges that I face in college are just making time to spend with reading my Bible and just talking to Jesus. That's sometimes a challenge because of the amount of work we get in college. So that plays a big role. Or knowing who to talk to and who are your friends and who you can really trust, that plays a big toll on you also.
How do you deal with those challenges?
Well, I definitely pray about it a lot, and I always just talk to Jesus every day. Like, even on my drives to school, I just talk to him. Half the time it seems like I'm talking to myself, but I'm really just talking to Jesus and being open with him and telling him how I'm feeling. Just in the good and the bad, I always talk to Jesus.
Do you ever experience any social isolation being a young believer in Jesus?
Yes, I have experienced that a few times where I have been isolated, but even in those times, I've learned to trust Jesus more than the things of this world because I know that the things of this world is going to pass. So I'm trusting in Jesus with my future.
What would you say to the youngsters out there who are going to be freshmen in college, away from family, away from their homes? What are the things that they should do in practicality to deal with the pressures they're going to face?
I would tell them that yes, you are going to face some sort of persecution, but stay strong in your faith in Jesus because he will definitely bless you and he will take care of you and he's placed you there for a purpose and Jesus has a purpose for your life.
How open are you, Sharon, to talk about your belief in Jesus to others in your age group?
I'm very open about it. I always try to encourage people to know Jesus, but I don't force it on them. Instead, I show them acts of Jesus. I show them compassion and kindness. I'm willing to listen to them. I'm always showing them love and caring for them. And whenever they ask me for prayer, I'm usually one of the first people they ask. And they're like, "You're such a prayer warrior." And I'm like, "Really?" And they're like, "Yeah, I know. I can always count on you to pray for me." And I always find that very encouraging to have. So I always try my best to pray for them.
Have you been able to lead someone in your age group to believe in Jesus?
Right now, I've helped people to know Jesus, but I haven't helped anyone personally. I've helped them little by little, just showing them random acts of kindness.
Now, what would you say from all the traits of Jesus? What is the greatest trait of Jesus that you admire the most?
I admire his unconditional love because I know that even in the good and bad times, he still loves me. And I've done so many bad things in my life, but even if my family abandons me or my friends, I know that Jesus still loves me and he still cares for me. And I think that's really important to have, because just knowing that I'm loved by him and that unconditional love and the fact that he'll love me no matter what is just incredible.
Now, Sarah, is there any part of your faith that you're uncomfortable with or you feel disconnected with?
Well, for a Christian faith, it's really good. But one part I really don't like is how churches are not as united as they should be. And I feel like a lot of churches should come together more and pray together as one big family and stay strong in their faith, because I think that's really important to have.
How do you think that could be done in today's world? There's so many different denominations.
I feel like even with just one church, it could have special meetings for the youth and just special Bible studies or kids meetings and stuff like that, just to encourage young adults and even children to stay strong in their relationship with Jesus. And I feel like that's really important to have.
Now, talking about youngsters, what do you think is the biggest issue that is faced by your generation today?
I feel like the biggest issue is how youngsters are so focused on technology and social media. Everybody's so into Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and all of those are really good, but in the end, it takes up so much time and it makes you forget about your studies, and it also hinders your relationship with Jesus because you're spending so much time on that instead of focusing on what Jesus wants you to do and your relationship with him. And I feel like you need to spend more time with that than on technology. So I feel like a lot of kids are so addicted to technology that they're just consumed by it and they're not really growing spiritually from it.
But there are so much advantages of having technology, especially in the spiritual aspect of it, because there's so much Christian outreach through it. So what would you say with that?
Yes, I agree with you completely, because there are a lot of Christian outreaches, things like that, especially messages by good pastors and stuff like that. But I feel like there's a time and a place for that, and I feel like you need to also have time to spend with Jesus and grow in your relationship with him. Yes, you can have Facebook and Twitter and all of that, but you should also want to read your Bible and talk to Jesus every day and have a personal relationship with him and grow in him. Another issue that a lot of youngsters even face is depression, which is very common for a lot of people to face, and a lot of youngsters don't even address it or tell anyone about it. So I feel like that's a major issue.
Do you feel the churches of today address that issue of depression effectively?
I feel like a lot of churches don't address it, and I feel like the way you can is create a safe environment for the youth, especially to have someone to know that they can talk to, and just have someone they can trust who they can be like, hey, I'm struggling with this, and just have an outreach, an outlet to go to, someone that they can rely on to pray for them or something like that. I feel like a lot of youth, they just see each other on Sundays for Sunday service, and that's about it. But I think that you guys should check in on each other throughout the week and say, hey, how are you doing this week? Are you struggling with anything? Do you need any prayer? Things like that will make a big difference. Kind of like just asking a friend, hey, how are you? And just actually willing to take the time to care and listen to what they have to say really brightens their day and makes a big difference and a big impact on their life. So I feel like just focusing on the little things makes a big difference.
Is there somebody who has inspired you in your walk with Jesus?
Yes, as I said earlier, Nick Bujic, who was born with no arms and legs, has inspired me a lot because he made me realize that this is a man who had no arms or legs. He couldn't walk since birth. And that's something I take for granted a lot. The fact that I have arms and legs, I never took it for granted till I heard of him, and I was like, wow, I take this for granted, and this is something I do on a regular basis. So hearing his testimony and how he's overcome so much made me cherish what Jesus has given me, and it made me grow stronger in my faith because it made me realize I shouldn't take these simple things for granted, because you don't know what's going on with someone else. You can't just take these things for granted. Instead, you count it as a blessing. I really think it's a blessing to have these things in life.
How would you describe your life without Jesus?
My life without Jesus? Well, my life without Jesus was really boring, and I felt really alone. I didn't have anyone. Sure, I grew up in a Christian home, yes. I grew up in a Christian home, so knowing about Jesus was easy. But I didn't have a relationship with him. And not having a relationship with him made me realize that I was just living in the world, and I was really spiritually dead. And I didn't like that. But once I had a relationship with him, I was really alive, and I found out that I have a purpose, and my life has a purpose, and I knew that Jesus has a plan for my life, and just having that encouragement made me grow strong in my faith.
What do you do to relax? What do you do in your pastime?
To relax, I love to write. I love to journal and be creative because I feel like writing helps you clear your mind and puts you at ease. So I enjoy writing a lot, and I also enjoy watching TV just for fun. I love to watch TV probably more than studying, which is not a good thing. So I should probably study more, which I need to work on. But yeah, I love to relax as much as I can. I feel like even though there are times in my life where I become really overwhelmed, just telling Jesus that, hey, I'm really stressed out, just relaxes me a bit. And just turning to writing and journaling. I do a lot of letters. I write a lot of letters to Jesus, and I'm always like, dear Jesus, this is how I'm feeling. And I always just go honest with him and tell him exactly how I'm feeling. And it helps me feel so much better to know that I'm telling Jesus whatever problems I'm facing, because it gives me a sense of peace that even though right now my situation might not be good, I know that my life is in his hands, and I know that I'm going to be okay. So I just find that very encouraging for me.
Sharon, what are your plans for the future?
Well, for me, I plan to adopt in the future because I feel like there are a lot of kids out there who are growing up without a safe environment or family or friends, and I want to adopt kids and give them a home and let them know that they're loved not just by me and my family, but they're also loved by Jesus, and I feel like that's really important to have.
What prompted you to take up on this decision to adopt kids?
Well, what inspired me was a lot of Christian artists adopt kids, and I find that really incredible because adoption is very spoken of very little, and I find it I want to adopt and just be a part of something and make a difference in just even one child's life. So I feel like that's really important because these children need a home, and I want to be able to impact them and give them a home.
Now, in the Indian culture, adoption is really looked down upon, and there's a social stigma attached to adoption. Is that true?
Yes, that is very true, and I find that very sad, especially with the Indian culture, because I feel like we shouldn't have that kind of stigma. Instead, we should be open to adoption, and we should be more willing and have a desire to adopt, because these kids need a home, and I feel like we can provide them with that home.
What did your parents have to say with their desire to adopt kids?
My parents told me that adoption is very expensive and the process is very long. And yes, I agree with them completely because it is going to be expensive and it's a long process because it might take just weeks or months or even a few years. But in the end, I feel like it'll be worth it because not only are you helping a child, but you're also getting an opportunity to change that child's life, and that child will influence your life for the better. And I feel like that's really important to do.
Now, do you have any family or friends who've adopted kids?
Yes, I do have a few friends of mine that have adopted kids, and while they adopted kids, it was mainly because either they couldn't have kids of their own and they adopted, or they already had kids and they wanted to adopt more. And I find that encouraging either way because I feel like you should adopt because opportunities like that are really incredible and you should take those kinds of opportunities.
Sharon, if you were given a chance to go back in time and change something in your past, is there anything that you could have done differently?
Yes. If I was able to go back in time, I would want to go back and try to save my friend. A few years ago, my friend committed suicide because she was depressed for a long time and not a lot of people knew about it. So if I had the opportunity, I would go back and try to show her more love and get her the help that she needed, because there are a lot of people out there, especially like even Christians or non-Christians, who are struggling with life and they don't have an outlet. They don't have someone to talk to. And I feel like we should be an outlet for them and let them know that they're able to talk to us and they're able to have a connection with someone. And I feel like I wish I could do that with her.
If there was one thing that you could change in the world today, what would that be, Sharon?
I feel like I would want to change how Christians see themselves. I think that Christians see themselves as like we have to put on a show. We have to act a certain way and we have to look nice or behave nice or pretend to be nice. But like on the inside, we might not be spiritually growing or we might not be emotionally healthy. And I feel like we need to show them that it's okay. Even as Christians, we struggle. It's okay. There are Christians out there who battle with depression and anxiety and stuff like that. And they need to know that it's okay to have normal struggles like this. It doesn't mean that, like, oh, they're a bad Christian. It just means that they're going through something. And I feel like when you go through those challenges in life and you overcome them, that's when Jesus uses that. Because I've heard from other pastors before that the hardest parts of your life that you've gone through, the only reason you're able to overcome them is because of Jesus. So I feel like if you just stay strong in your faith, even in the times of doubt and depression and anxiety and all of that, if you stay strong in your faith, I know that Jesus will help you get through it. And even if he doesn't, just know that he is with you throughout the whole journey and throughout everything. He never leaves you. Just like, as I mentioned earlier, his love for us is unconditional. So even in the good times and bad, I know that Jesus still loves me. And I feel like that's very important to understand.
As we conclude today's show, Sharon, what would you like to tell the youngsters of today?
I would like to tell them that it's okay to have struggles in life. I think that the struggles in life are going to help you to become a better person, because when you struggle with something, you're able to encourage someone else who might be going through the same thing. For example, if you're struggling with depression and you've overcome that, you can help someone else who's struggling with depression. So I feel like we should have more opportunities for people to talk to people and reach out to people and just be there for them. Just be a good, caring friend. Live like Jesus did and have compassion on like the poor and the needy and care for them. So I feel like that's really important. Speaking of that, I hope that in the future, I want to be a part of a suicide prevention organization. So even though I wasn't able to help my friend, I want to be able to help others who might be struggling with that. And I hope that like even young people out there who are dealing with depression or contemplating life, I want you to know that there is hope out there and you have hope in Jesus. And just know that even if you feel neglected and not loved by anyone, or even like family and friends leave you, just know that Jesus loves you no matter what. And he has a plan and purpose for your life. So even if you want to give up in life, please don't give up. Instead, trust in Jesus and ask Jesus to help you, because I know that Jesus will always help you and he will always be there for you in the good times and bad. Especially for me, someone who's gone through depression and has contemplated life, I realized that even throughout that journey that Jesus was there for me, and Jesus met me where I was in that midst of chaos and pain, and he showed me that I'm loved by him. And I just find that incredible, because just knowing that Jesus loved me when no one else loved me and cared about me, and Jesus was showing compassion toward me, and he said, I'm with you and I'm always going to be with you, and he even said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And just knowing that kind of love and knowing that his love is unconditional is just incredible. So for anyone who's struggling with life or dealing with depression or any kind of hurt or bitterness toward anyone, just know that Jesus loves you and that he has a plan for your life. So don't give up in life, because you'll regret it. Instead, have hope in the future that God will provide, especially the fact that Jesus holds your every step. So he will provide for you in the future. Just have faith in him.
Thank you so much for those inspiring words. Thank you for your time on our show. We wish you all the best for all your plans for the future.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, folks, for joining us on another episode of Why Jesus. We hope that you'll join us again for our next show next week. Thank you.